have a red dot that says we're recording. So as they would remind you over in the UK and other parts of Europe, that if you're not comfortable being recorded, now would be a good time to drop off, since we are recording our next chapter of the baseline. This is a project future discussion for June of 2022. And just to give everyone a quick reminder of what this is that we're recording here, Project Future is a campaign that's meant to inform PMO directors and program managers through conversations between Microsoft project veteran practitioners. And legacy practitioners is the reference to previous versions of project. This is meant to be a conversation between informed partners. Blue badges refers to employees of Microsoft and customers, users of Microsoft Project. And primarily, we're interested in discussing where exactly is Microsoft Project Online going. And we're going to have a little more pointed conversation about that today. So where is Microsoft Project Online going? What good does Microsoft Project Online do me, and how can I use Microsoft Project Online with data in Azure? So those types of questions are the subject matter of our conversation. Before we get started with today's session, I will briefly introduce Chris Athey and Ian Bowman. And so I'll give you two both a chance to say a quick hello and why you care about Microsoft Project. So Chris, go ahead.
Hello, care about Microsoft Project because I've been doing it, implementing and consulting around it, as well as building some solutions, extension solutions for it for 20 some years. So I have a lot invested in it, and there's a future there.
Fair enough. There is a future there. That's Ian.
Let's see here. So project portfolio reporting is my interest, and Microsoft Project being one, and one of the longer running sources for that. And yeah, I think this will be a good conversation. Lots going on in the world with project, and it's how work gets done ultimately is projects and tasks. So
you are absolutely right about that. It is how a lot of work gets done. All right, myself, Owen Callan, and from Seacastle Incorporated here, good old Seacastle. And my interest in Project Online is manifold. So I've been involved with Project Online for decades and was part of the group that put together the original credential, the Microsoft Certified Technical Experts, the MCTE, or the Technical Professional, MCTP, and also an early adopter of the PMP, the Project Management Professional. And so I am very accustomed to working with project management in a disciplined type of format and function. And that's exactly what projects, the desktop tool and Project Online do for me, is they provide me a capability and a platform that supports professional project management at a standard that you would want from any world-class project management shop. You'd expect nothing less from Microsoft. But right now, we have some partners on the call here who are all either silver or gold PPM Microsoft Project Partner. PPM stands for, of course, Project and Portfolio Management, or Portfolio and Program Management, depending upon who you're asking in the world. And right now, in order for us to become qualified project partners with Microsoft, we need to demonstrate proficiency with Teams. Specifically, there's an exam called the MS 700, or the Microsoft Teams Administrator Associate. We don't even need to be fully fledged in the knowledge about Microsoft Teams. We just need to be associates, because there are higher levels of proficiency for administrators to be aware of. And so again, with the Microsoft Project Partner group, and think of this anytime that you're talking to a gold partner from Microsoft, a gold project partner, and my apologies to the gold project partners on the call, you need to understand that they did not necessarily demonstrate proficiency with project. I will start with the gold partner on the call, because the rest of us are silver. So the gold credential in Microsoft Projects requires proficiency, Chris, and not project. Is this reasonable? And if it is, why? And if it's not, why not?
Just to keep it simple, I don't think it's reasonable. There's enough knowledge base in how to take a company to solid project management principles, to solid portfolio management, to meaningful reports to the executives as a whole structure, that I think we're getting lost nowadays in small team dynamics. And basically Teams is intended to help communication and somewhat structure that communication. But there's nothing in Teams that really speaks to planning and tracking and reporting to executives with the project management, portfolio management discipline.
There are things we can do to make Teams a project tool, but out of the box, it's not there. What do you think, Ian? Is this, at least for me, so sorry to put my thumb on the scale before you answer. What do you think about the proficiency in Teams being required for partners?
I don't know, and here's why.
Okay.
I think that one of the complaints about competencies is that they're very product centric, like Microsoft product, name of the product,
Sure.
versus what the customer is trying to accomplish. I need to manage projects, right? And so the customer that needs to manage projects, yes, some of those may need to be in something very structured like Microsoft Project Online. Others of those things are going to be much more or much less structured. And I think the mix these days has been trending toward the less structured. I don't know that Teams is the perfect replacement for that either, though, and so that's why I say I don't know. Teams is in just the administrator or associate is a little too loose, it feels like to me. So
for the audience members out there that might think that the competencies are too product oriented, the purpose of the competencies is to demonstrate that partners have proficiency in the products that they're supposedly supporting, and so that is not necessarily a flaw in my opinion. And at the same time, to your points about the structure of the world and all that, Microsoft is doing away with the way that they have structured the Microsoft Partner Network. Has changed its name. It's now the Microsoft Cloud Partner Program, I think is the name of it, where these competencies will qualify for points towards participating in that program.
Just when it comes to silver and gold proficiencies, it's not just about tests, but it's also about getting basically successful clients writing in and supporting you. So while Microsoft is product focused and has been historically because they want people to implement the product, implementation of a portfolio management office, working with the executives to set a practice in place and all the processes around that practice. There are a lot of soft skills and executive level skills there. Mm-hmm. So it's not just product skills. And what I was saying earlier is Teams is focused on team dynamics, but not necessarily putting in this centerpiece where you're collecting all this information and timesheets from all these people, all the way up to portfolio management and the decisions being made in the portfolio management side and the executive views of those reports and all the soft skills to get all those in line for specific companies. So I'll get off my horse there, but it's really the experience and the successfulness in taking clients there.
All right. So where else does the project tool set support project management these days? So in an apps world, where does a tool like Microsoft Project Professional, and specifically now what we would probably be referring to amongst ourselves as the project desktop, where does that tool fit in with Azure, M365, and M365? So let's start with you, Ian.
I guess here's my thought on desktop tools in general, right? Is that there are certain experiences that for whatever reason, it helps to have the data, everything that you're working on your computer for faster response, for drag and drop changiness, etc. I usually think of those as like the design experiences. So, analogy to Power BI is you've got Power BI desktop where you can do more design stuff than you can online. Over time, I think that's going to be less and less. I think that, the architecture, the ability to do design and those data intensive things online is improving. So I don't know how much longer desktop experiences overall have, but because this is such a legacy tool and because there isn't really a forward path that I see toward moving that capability online, in depth, I think that I think we're going to have to wait for the next version or the next iteration of whatever project is going to be in the future to evolve before we know much more about that. So
that's an interesting input there as to whatever it's going to be. So let's circle back around on that in just a moment. Chris, what do you think? Where does Project Desktop fit in?
I would say Project Desktop is one of the few places where you have the richness that has existed in that product for a while, developed in that product, the whole baseline concepts, all that. There's a richness just from the longevity of the product. That doesn't mean that can't be taken to the cloud. And it has in part. It's just not completely been taken to the cloud yet. You do have to retain, it depends on the company you're in, but many companies have their project managers walk around the manufacturing floor and take current status from the manufacturing floor, or travel to different sites, etc. So those, you have to have a concept where you're working out of cache and where you have that capability to bring it up even when you're disconnected, if you will, and to sync it there. But I don't think that's impossible to achieve. We've already got that in many products, including Outlook, etc. So I think the pieces are there. Really, it's MS Project Desktop has been used in this whole swath of scenarios. And it's the coverage of the full swath of scenarios that has been taking time, I think, and takes the investment. And I'm not sure that we Microsoft and Microsoft partners are still focused on covering the whole swath of scenarios in the new path forward. We've seen a movement to accept the cloud and the security. It's been moving faster than I expected, let's put it that way. And project itself, yes, Project Desktop is a desktop client, but it did move to the server and then became multi-role. So you have resource managers as well as project managers as well as executives, so that the cost of the individuals is maintained by HR, the resource manager, versus the project manager. So it already started diversifying in the early server days when it first went to server, right? And the whole portfolio aspect pulls in the executive level. So I would contend that Project Desktop in combination with the server was the first enterprise app, if you will, that was broadly accepted.
In the interest of time, quick question here of real specific interest to the folks on this particular call. It would have been, I'm curious the input from others when I follow up with them. What question would you most like to see answered? So you get one question, and it's 30 seconds or less, one question. What question would you like most to see answered by machine learning and project and portfolio management data?
To think about that, because there's the Douglas Adams response. But
understood. That'd be fine. For those of you not aware at home, Douglas Adams was the one who taught us not to panic. And
yes,
that's so. Ian, What question would you most like to see answered?
Oh gosh, something around schedule thrash, I suppose, is indication of schedules rapidly changing and changing again. Where it's not just the baseline and the last version that you've kind of committed, but just the ability to see when schedules change more easily and to have it highlighted.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess I would add to that the training of the machine learning to see not only that the schedules are changing, but that they're changing inappropriately or appropriately, so they can get credit where credit's due. Schedules change as a matter of course,
yeah.
Right? And however, you're dealing with an ongoing live project as well as the maturity of the project manager. Maturity, and it's better said as experience, not maturity. Experience of the project manager and how they react to that, how well they did their foresight planning and laid out a plan with options in it, or are they just reacting all the time? So was your initial budget and initial duration estimate worthwhile at all? And historically, how well does your organization do? How much better can it do? I'd like to see machine learning and data analysis answer that and help the project manager become more consistent and drive towards a higher quality standard schedule, or even as it ongoing changes.
All right. So again, both very sound answers, and at the same time, my answer probably would be more along the lines of a Douglas Adams type of answer, because I look at a loss of focus of what is the purpose of project management and project managers. It's what are we supposed to be doing? It's in project management, it's the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet or exceed stakeholder needs and expectations from a project, right? Big old mouthful, lots of words in there, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's stakeholders' needs and expectations that are supposed to be addressed here. Project managers tend to focus on the short term, the constraints, the finish line, getting it across the finish line. But what the question I would like most to see answered, was this beneficial to do? Was this a worthwhile investment of people's time, effort, sweat, capital, risk, whatever? And did it pay off? Did it actually accomplish what it was intended to accomplish? So it's a little farther reaching than what most. So during our last call, we discussed timesheets as a favorite tool. So it's unfortunate Tony wasn't here to get the joy and the love that it was his favorite tool, right? Do some industries use timesheets, project timesheets specifically, differently than others? And if yes, in what ways? And if no, should they? So, Chris, as Tony's representative, I'll go to you first.
The short answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
And it runs the gamut. Just like people use Project Desktop to solve so many different problems, anything from planning a birthday party to predicting budget and establishing an initial budget and playing games with, okay, if I have different team members, et cetera, what's going to be. So the timesheets are used in a similar way. We've seen everything from one line per project to just capture basically HR equivalent, what am I working on, to extremely detailed plans that can be then used historically to reinvigorate the estimation process, to validate the estimation or create a more standardized estimation process in a given industry. So there's just a whole gamut of different ways to use the timesheet beyond the standard, just enter time and enter time to project and to task so that it can be passed on to payroll, and so people see kind of that you're doing something.
Okay. Ian?
I think increasingly companies have timesheets associated either with a timesheet. Let me say that differently. The companies that I deal with tend to either have timesheets associated with a separate timesheet tracking thing, which is just about timesheets, or in an ERP thing. Timesheets and project is not a thing that I see often. So I think that may answer the, do some industries use timesheets differently? Yeah, I think, where they've got an ERP that's got all the pieces in it, including timesheets, and it all works together well, they're going to probably lean that way. Where it's missing that piece, they're going to go find another solution. And if they already have project in their project capabilities in their ERP, they're probably going to go for a standalone kind of dealie.
So again, a good solid answer. I look at timesheets as being similar to the HR discussion, the project management discussion. Everyone could use it. Everyone could use it differently. I've worked in organizations where if you didn't fill out your timesheet, you didn't get your payroll submitted. This was especially aggravating to a third of the workforce who were MDs and not accustomed to this level of accountability. Yes, there are different uses for timesheets by different industries, and this is worthy of a whole hour-long conversation itself. And we'll move on to this question that I really want to get to. A Project Online was launched in 2015, and I actually I was scratching my head over if it was 2015 or not, because this is hard to find. If you didn't go back and archive this yourself in the Wayback Machine, so I guess I'll have to go to the Wayback Machine, which is typically reserved for like political disputes and when people scrub their websites. But Microsoft is in a very political world right now with Microsoft Project and Project Online. So Project was launched in 2015. Project for the Web was launched in 2018. Microsoft tried very hard to get us just to adopt the nomenclature Project. But they still had Project Online. So they had to distinguish between Project Online and Project. So Project became Project for the Web. Right? Then Dynamics 365 Project Operations came along in 2021. Right? We've got the links here. I can bring up each of the individual pages. And when I ask the Microsoft product marketing team about these blog posts and whether or not they're still relevant about the future of Project today. The first thing that they'll point out to me is how old these blog posts are, and could I please use something that was more recent, right? So this was the next blog post that came out after 2015, the Q&A on Project Future, or the future vision of projects, again, 2018. But this is, again, too old from the project marketing team. They would much rather you see the roadmap. Let's say the roadmap, this one. Or actually, no, that's project operations. Sorry about that. The roadmap was this one. Right? And partially, I think the reason why they'd rather have you come here is because it is not clear at all that they're turning off SharePoint in Project Online from this list of things that you need to go sort through. Project Online launched 2015, Project for the Web 2018, Project Operations 2021. It is now 2022. How much longer do we think Project Online has? When is Microsoft going to close the doors? So, Chris?
I would say it's a moving target, and they'll close the doors first to the general public, and the companies that have a strong enough case for continuing here and a tight enough relationship, they'll go forward with. I think the underlying piece here that they're trying to move away from is the syncing process between the desktop and Project Online is what they dearly love to replace with better technology. And they'd rather not maintain the Project Online pieces forever. So I think they're chasing, to some extent, a moving target. And part of the replacement issue is when they have something that's got the full capability of the Project Desktop in this world, in the new mode, if you will, a replacement for it, it'll be a lot easier shift. But then they have to convert the existing users, have to have a migration path.
All right, Ian.
Yeah, I don't know when. I think Chris is right. It's when enough of the capabilities have reemerged elsewhere. I think that two pieces to that. One, some of those capabilities get built into other products. We're already seeing some of that. And the other is that the underlying architecture, and you mentioned before the Dataverse SharePoint question, which I think is pretty interrelated with this, just becomes easier at some point. But then you still have all the client specific, customizations and migrations and whatnot. So when, I don't know. I don't know. But it feels gosh, it feels like the pieces are out there, but there's not a lot of urgency, it seems, to kind of get through to the end. So I don't know.
All right, so following up with the I don't knows, what suggestions might we have for Project Online users, current Project Online users who are now wondering what they should be considering in light of what is known? So, and we're down to just a couple of minutes left here. So, Ian, succinctly, what is your number one suggestion for anyone who is already a Project Online user that is now facing this uncertainty about the future of their data world?
Be experimenting with Dataverse, other products. Yeah, be experimenting.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and feedback to your Microsoft account managers, basically keep pushing them for where they're headed, because there are some replacements for some companies, the way they use the product. However, in other areas, there aren't really good options. So you have to understand those and go ahead and make the suggestions for any gaps to your account managers so that they can be taken on board on the different Microsoft teams.
Excellent. All right. Last question that we have here. In just about a month, 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, Microsoft is going to announce all their partner of the year for the various different silos and the various different groups. And so one of the groups that gets a partner of the year is the project or the business applications or the modern workplace. And I forget again where they shoehorned project in this year. I think we're business applications. That's so there will be a project and portfolio management partner of the year, and then there will be 2 or 3 or 4 runners up, depending upon how many entries they had, or whatever their cutoff. So from we have no insight, or at least as far as I know, nobody on this panel has any insight into who even nominated themselves. We don't even know who's in the running. But based upon the world that we know and the usual contenders, who do we think might be the winner, partner of the year in 2022? Chris, go with you first.